1 month later, December 7th, 1941. Seeing the newsreel, Soviet moviegoers were outraged.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Swiftly, the Japanese flooded over Hong Kong, Malaya, Singapore, Burma, Indonesia, the Philippines, New Ireland, New Britain, the Solomons, New Guinea, Guam, the islands of Micronesia. Their control extended over 150 million people. Hundreds of thousands of Dutch, French, Australians, British, and Americans doomed to 4 years in the prison camps. Tojo, the Japanese Prime Minister, preached closer cooperation with Germany and Italy. In spite of Japan's successes over the United States, Tojo warned the war would be a long one. The Japanese had their own version of Hitler's new order and used some of the same techniques in their Asian conquests. Wholesale slaughter, torture, degradation. In 1943, the Japanese conscripted labor from the vast pool they controlled in China. Drafting them by the thousands into Manchuria, the Japanese set them to building a series of massive fortifications facing the Soviet Union. A new commander was appointed to head the Kwantung Army, General Yamada, a veteran. August 1945, the Kwantung Army in Manchuria numbered over 1 million men. After the defeat of Hitler, the Allies held their last summit meeting at Potsdam near Berlin. It was very different from all its predecessors. The great common enemy had been vanquished. The concerns were for the power structure of the post-war world. At Yalta earlier that year, it was agreed that the Kuril Islands and South Sakhalin would return to Russia. The Soviets promised to enter the war against Japan within 3 months of the cessation of hostilities in Europe. They made arrangements to honor the pledge. Troops still celebrating their victory over Hitler were shipped out of Europe. Masses of them trundled 8,000 miles into the strange lands of the Soviet Far East. Some of the soldiers had not had leave in 4 years. Some passed their hometowns, which no longer existed. Transportation was waiting for them, shipped in from the United States. The top Soviet commanders took up their positions, armed with code names and false identification, to help keep the size and importance of the operation secret. Marshal Vasilevsky, Marshal Meretskov, Marshal Malinovsky. Their mission was the destruction of the entire Kwantung Army. The idea was to surround the Kwantung Army so fast that it would not be able to withdraw into China or Korea. Was Vasilevsky's. They didn't take long to agree. It was scheduled for August 9th. The night before, Marshal Vasilevsky called Moscow to report to Stalin. But the Generalissimo, confident of his armies, was not to be disturbed. He was watching a favorite movie given him by President Roosevelt.
After the Germans surrendered, the Russians rapidly moved enormous numbers of troops and masses of equipment to the Far East, a distance of 8,000 miles. And on August the 8th, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan.
Over 1.5 million soldiers awaited the assault signal. One wing was the first Far Eastern Front under Marshal Meretskov. Rapid movement of masses of troops was a problem. There were no roads, and the country was covered with a thick tangle of brush. As expected, the Japanese fought fanatically. The battle was a slow, grinding struggle for the Soviets. Unluckily for the Japanese, the Red Army had long since perfected its artillery techniques. The effect was awesome. They broke through the border fortifications, not without loss, then moved on to envelop the city of Mutankin, a major strong point. The Second Far Eastern Front was commanded by General Maxim Porkayev. This army group's mission was the Amur River and the Japanese positions on the far bank. As the Japanese pulled back, they demolished what few bridges there were over the network of rivers. The heavy rains had turned the route of General Porkayev's advance into a gigantic swamp. Of water was so complex that most of the Soviet attacks were amphibious, supported by the Amur flotilla, a pocket navy. In spite of the obstacles, the Soviet covered 35 miles a day, sometimes more. It was at least the equal of anything Hitler's vaunted panzers had achieved in their headlong drives across Europe. The third Soviet group, the Baikal Front, was not expected by the Japanese. It came in from the rear. The Baikal Front was commanded by Marshal Rodion Malinovsky. Malinovsky's men faced one of the most forbidding mountain ranges in Asia, the Greater Khingan.